Think it's easy being an A-list Hollywood celeb? Well, to be honest, it probably is, but that doesn't mean stars can't have regrets. When you think of Hugh Grant's most famous roles, you probably think of the plethora of romantic comedies in which he's appeared over the years. It doesn't seem like being recognized in this way would leave you much room for remorse. But Grant believes that you can certainly have too much of a good thing, and sometimes the thing wasn't even that good in the first place.
That my heart is, and always will be, yours.
In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Grant recalled that he would occasionally take roles despite knowing from the beginning that a film would be bad. In fact, sometimes he would accept the part for exactly that reason. He enjoyed bad films and would even, as a general rule, accept those roles more quickly than better ones. Looking back, Grant realized that he didn't have enough experience or trust in himself when it came to dealing with fame and success. He'd take roles quickly without thinking because he was still in the mindset of an unemployed actor. By the time he knew better, he had appeared in so many of the same types of roles that he felt he'd pigeonholed himself beyond rescue. He said, "I should have made interesting decisions and done different stuff. Instead, I repeated myself almost identically about 17 times in a row." While Brad Pitt has appeared in multiple films that received a less than stellar reception, his biggest regret was actually one of his more successful projects. 12 Monkeys, which was released in 1995, was beloved by audiences and critics alike, and Pitt's role earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. But years after this early appearance as Jeffrey Goan, Pitt doesn't seem to see what everyone else does. While the role could easily be called a pivotal one in his career, one that pushed him out of the familiar realm of brooding heartthrob and into a place of depth and unpredictability, the accomplished actor has instead stated that it haunts him. It's not just that he's looking back with more experienced eyes. He says that he genuinely can't even watch the second half of the film. In a 2019 interview with the New York Times, he said, "I knew in the second half of the film I was playing the gimmick of what was real in the first half, until the last scene, and it bugged the shit out of me." As it turns out, Mel Gibson regrets becoming an actor at all. The man who has worn the hats of performer, producer, and director has actually said that if he could go back to his early 20s, he'd make a different choice regarding the direction of his career. Gibson's reasoning is partly based on what he described to Deadline as the loss of personal anonymity, as well as the hijacking of stars' intentions when fame and entertainment take on a life of their own.
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
The choice to become an actor, which he made when he was 21 or 22, is one Gibson describes as spur of the moment, one that lacked the context of experience or the sway of maturity, and one that, once made, could not be taken back. Even when he took a break from acting for lower-profile creative pursuits, he said that none of the downsides changed. Gibson told Deadline, "You can't put toothpaste back in the tube." Carrie Fisher was beloved by fans for playing the iconic Princess Leia in the Star Wars franchise. At least, that's how it seemed from the fan side of things, but the situation looked a little different on her end. Indeed, fame doesn't just convey the love of a fan base to its object. Sometimes it makes things much more complicated. In Fisher's case, if she had known about the fame that was going to come with it, she would have gone back and refused the role of Leia. Rather than feeling beloved or iconic, the most salient effect of fame on her psyche was a quiet but ardent desire for it to come to an end. In her book Wishful Drinking, Fisher wrote that waiting for that day consumed her life during the height of her fame. This degree of honesty was characteristic of Fisher, and fans' adoration for her can arguably be attributed far more to her sense of humor and genuine personality than any movie role. Jennifer Grey was America's baby, the endearing co-star of 1987's Dirty Dancing alongside Patrick Swayze. This film and the performance of its two top-billed stars is synonymous with 80s nostalgia and remains timelessly quotable and memeable to this day.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
So if the film and its stars are so timeless, where's Jennifer Grey today? The actor, whose career took a dive after the success of this role, says that a nose job from hell was to blame for making her unrecognizable. She went into an operating room as a celebrity, she says, and came out anonymous. Even her friends didn't recognize her. She even tried to make light of the catastrophe with a role as herself in the 1999 sitcom It's Like, You Know, but the series was canceled after 2 seasons, and her career was never the same. Botched plastic surgeries aren't uncommon in Hollywood, but to lose your career is a terrible price to pay for one, even by industry standards. Game of Thrones fans got a front row seat to most of Sophie Turner's youth, appearing on the show for its entire 8-season run. Her character, Sansa Stark, grew up right alongside her, from a timid young girl promised in marriage to a sociopathic prince, into a strong young woman capable of protecting herself and her family. But these lessons aren't necessarily transferable to the life of a young English actor. Instead, what would have been Turner's high school and college years were eclipsed by her time on Game of Thrones. There are certain things about the university experience she believes that can't be replicated, and ultimately it's an experience she wishes she'd had. Still, from the ages of 13 to 23, Turner says that even though she grew up on camera, she had a great time on the set of the HBO fantasy drama, where she had plenty of people around her to protect her from the troubles of fame. Betty White enjoyed one of the longest and most well-loved careers in Hollywood before her death at age 99 on December 31, 2021. White began entertaining others when she was just 8 years old, playing an orphan on a radio drama called Empire Builders. Many people knew her best for shows such as The Golden Girls, but by the time that sitcom aired in the 1980s, her career was already 4 decades old. White put a lot of work into building her television career over the years, but this, in a way, was her greatest regret. After 2 short-lived marriages, White finally met and fell in love with Alan Ludden, whom she would remain married to for 18 years. When Ludden died of stomach cancer, she realized that she deeply regretted wasting time that she could have had with the love of her life. White had kept telling herself that she wouldn't leave her life in California for New York, despite his multiple proposals. It took her a year to finally say yes, and that year was something she later said she'd change in a heartbeat. As you might expect, Charlie Sheen has a lot of regrets, from his public fights with collaborators to the cringeworthy remarks for which he is now quite famous.
I'm by winning. I win here and I win there. Now what?
But one of his biggest regrets is how poorly he handled his salary dispute on 2.5 Men. At the time, Sheen was one of the highest paid actors on television, and also one of the most volatile, with his headline making conflicts, outbursts, and bizarre remarks defining much of his life in the 2000s. Sheen chalks a lot of these problems up to the fact that he was struggling with addiction and mental health problems. His private battles gave way to public ones, including an assault on his ex-wife that resulted in a stint in rehab, as well as a long-running beef with the creator of 2.5 Men, Chuck Lorre. This involved a series of public verbal attacks and aggressive rants in interviews after Sheen was fired from the show in 2011 for destructive behavior. But of all these mistakes, the one Sheen regrets was demanding more money for starring in 2.5 Men, saying, "There was 55 different ways for me to handle that situation, and I chose number 56. There was a considerable reckoning in Hollywood in the latter half of the 2010s, with hundreds of women from all industries launching a movement known as Time's Up, aimed at ending gender discrimination and sexual harassment in the professional world. After the revelations of Harvey Weinstein's misconduct opened the floodgates for survivors to speak up about incidents involving many different individuals, actors and crew members throughout Hollywood were forced to reevaluate their career choices. The renewed attention placed on sexual misconduct in Hollywood resurrected a number of unpleasant truths about once revered directors such as Woody Allen and Roman Polanski. Although she has expressed remorse over other areas of her career, Kate Winslet has stated that working with morally shady directors like Allen on Wonder Wheel and Polanski on Carnage is one particular regret that she continues to grapple with. Winslet questions what she thought she was doing at the time, while acknowledging that she must take responsibility for the part she played in the high regard these men enjoyed for so long. Jennifer Aniston has a complicated relationship with Rachel, her iconic character from the seminal 90s sitcom Friends. She once said that the part felt completely inescapable, telling The Hollywood Reporter that she just could not get Rachel Green off of her back, and even wanted the show to stop running. But her back wasn't the place that Rachel did the most damage. For Aniston, it was the top of her head. During the first season, the actor and her character became famous for a hairstyle popularly dubbed the Rachel, to the point where women across the country went to their stylists in droves asking for the star-powered cut.
And that hairdo lasted about a total, I think, of 7 months.
Right.
And it has had legs of 15 years.
To Aniston, though, this haircut was simply another example of Rachel's inescapable allure. She could convince an entire audience of women to get a layered and highlighted shag cut that was, in her opinion, the ugliest haircut she had ever seen. Not for nothing, but Aniston has also gone on record to say that her stylist at the time, whom she nevertheless loves very much, was stoned when he created it. Before she was Katniss Everdeen, Jennifer Lawrence was just a young, struggling actor trying to get noticed, and she certainly wasn't in the position to be turning down roles. By the time the early 2010s rolled around, however, Lawrence's performance in Winter's Bone had led to leading parts in blockbuster hits including X-Men First Class and the Hunger Games movies. And when she ran up the stairs to accept an Academy Award at just 22 years old for her work in Silver Linings Playbook, she likely felt her days of desperation were definitely over. Sadly, that isn't exactly how things played out. In an interview with the New York Times, Lawrence admitted that she let herself be hijacked by her creative team, whose vision of the actor as a blockbuster action star conflicted with her own aspirations. She explained, "I found out that a lot of filmmakers that I really loved and admired had scripts that weren't even reaching me." Lawrence also suggested that had she taken a more proactive, assertive role in her career path, she would have made fewer films like Passengers and Red Sparrow, and more like 2022's Causeway. She continued, "Everything was like a rebound effect. I was reacting rather than just acting." Ever since Scarlett Johansson landed her breakout role in 2003's Lost in Translation, she has reigned over Hollywood as one of the preeminent leading ladies of her generation. From starring in indie projects like the 2013 sci-fi thriller Under the Skin, to playing Russian super spy Natasha Romanoff in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the litany of characters throughout her body of work can broadly be described as complex, formidable, and arresting. On the other hand, this character type can unfortunately be reduced to a hypersexualized male fantasy in the eyes of audiences and casting directors alike, a reality which gave Johansson constant anxiety about her career longevity. Speaking to fellow performer Dax Shepard on the Armchair Expert podcast, the actor shared that she felt objectified by the industry early in her career, confined to a handful of demeaning archetypes that felt foreign to her.
In a weird way, I was like, is this it? And I attributed a lot of that to the fact that people thought I was much, much older than I was.
Despite feeling that her career growth had stagnated just as quickly as it had begun, Johansson has been able to portray a wide variety of characters in recent years. This includes roles in films such as Marriage Story and Jojo Rabbit, both of which earned her Oscar nominations in 2020, making her one of only a dozen actors in history to be nominated twice in one season. Just before Scarlett Johansson arguably became the face of Hollywood's whitewashing problem for taking the lead role in the 2017 live-action Ghost in the Shell adaptation, Emma Stone ignited the discourse when she appeared in the 2015 romantic comedy Aloha. This baffling feature was torn to shreds by critics upon release for, among other things, casting Stone as a Chinese-Hawaiian woman named Allison Ng. Director Cameron Crowe acknowledged and partially apologized for the choice, claiming that the character was based on a real person who, despite identifying with a mixture of ethnic backgrounds, passed as solely white. At the time, Stone carefully balanced standing by her director and admitting that the casting was ill-conceived, wading through the controversy mostly unscathed while promoting her next project. But even though it didn't meaningfully hinder her career, save a few jokes here and there, the actor doesn't seem to relish her participation in the film. When Sandra Oh ribbed both her and Johansson about playing Asian characters at the Golden Globes, Stone could be heard shouting an apology from the audience. Apparently, George Clooney regrets assuming that 1997's Batman and Robin would be his big break.
Very nice.
To be fair, that's a reasonable assumption to make of a big-budget superhero flick, but it's certainly a far cry from the reality of a film he has since called a waste of money. Although Clooney also said that the experience at least taught him to pick better projects. The gravity of this regret is what makes it so notable. Clooney went from calling his friends screaming when he got the part to being utterly disgusted with the final product, apologizing profusely to fans multiple times, and even expressing a fear that he had destroyed the franchise altogether.
I thought at the time this was going to be a very good career move. It wasn't.
Most importantly, though, Clooney holds the experience close to his heart as a reminder of the lesson it taught him. By assuming that the role would be his big break, he made the mistake of focusing more on commercial motivations for making a film than the actual merit of the project. He even displays a photo of himself as Batman on his office wall so that he will never forget that lesson. It may surprise some to learn that despite her sizable fame and indisputable cultural impact, Emma Watson has appeared in fewer than 20 feature films throughout her career, 8 of which were Harry Potter movies. Her last feature, Greta Gerwig's remake of Little Women, was released in 2019, and there's not much to suggest that she's working on anything due out in the near future. While you might assume that Watson has struggled to maintain her post-Wizarding World career or is perfectly happy to enjoy the fruits of that chapter of her life, the reality is that she just wasn't particularly fond of doing press tours. In 2023, she told the Financial Times, "The thing I found really hard was that I had to go out and sell something that I really didn't have very much control over. To stand in front of a film and have every journalist be able to say, 'How does this align with your viewpoint?' It was very difficult to have to be the face and the spokesperson for things where I didn't get to be involved in the process." Watson further described feeling frustrated and caged by her role as an actor, and has since resolved to work on projects on which she has enough control and knowledge to stand behind it wholeheartedly. One way she's been able to regain this ground? By studying to be both a writer and director. For better and for worse, Elizabeth Olsen was never the same after joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Being cast in 2013 as Wanda Maximoff and playing a major role in 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron escalated her star power almost instantaneously, effectively securing her almost a decade's worth of high-paying work within the ever-sprawling MCU.
We are an unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
As exciting as that may have initially been, however, it soon gave way to a common negative side effect of signing one of these comprehensive superhero contracts: a total lack of time and energy to do anything else. Marvel actors are essentially forced to prioritize a single role for several years, circumstances which could stoke an understandable level of resentment toward even the most fulfilling of characters. For Olsen, loving Wanda wasn't enough to satisfy the part of her that wanted to take on more diverse projects. Speaking to the New York Times, she recalled a particularly painful opportunity she lost to the Marvel Monster, a starring role in Yorgos Lanthimos' The Lobster. Losing the chance to participate in such a unique film frustrated Olsen. She explained, "I had this job security, but I was losing these pieces that I felt were more part of my being." Olsen has since fought hard to expand her roles outside the MCU. Following her apparent death in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, she seems to be taking at least a slight step back from the franchise for the foreseeable future. The Netflix series Wednesday drew a respectable audience back in 2022 for its offbeat tone and dark sense of humor. But Jenna Ortega had some reservations about one of the show's moments going viral online. At a school dance, Ortega's Wednesday Addams performs an awkward yet strangely entrancing dance routine set to the Cramps' Goo Goo Muck. Someone online took the dance and replaced the music with a pitched-up version of Lady Gaga's Bloody Mary, and an online sensation was born. For Ortega, however, this became something of a nightmare. She told The Times, "When they were telling me, I was trying to seem uplifted about it, like, oh wow. But mentally in my head, I was hoping people wouldn't pay so much attention to that part. I don't think people are naturally designed to have that many eyes on them."
I definitely feel like there's been a shift in my life, and I feel a shift in energy and change, and I feel like it's definitely a new time in my life.
Likely adding to the anxiety was the fact that Burton tasked Ortega with choreographing the scene herself, an assignment which she had barely 2 days to execute. The final product seen on Netflix is, according to her, partially improvised. If you've been enjoying the surprise hit Netflix series One Day, you'll be interested to know that the book was originally adapted into a 2011 feature film starring Jim Sturgis and Anne Hathaway. Though most who saw it likely only remember it for the insane out-of-left-field plot twist toward the end, it's also somewhat notable as Hathaway's first major film in which she worked with a female director, Lona Scherfig, though she had previously worked with Barbara Kopel on the direct-to-DVD crime film Havoc in 2005. One Day was Hathaway's first opportunity to collaborate with a woman working on a project of this scale. As she told ABC News in 2017, this forced her to confront an unconscious bias she wasn't aware she had, as she felt herself struggling to find faith in Scherfig's vision. She shared, "I am to this day scared that the reason I didn't trust her the way I trust some of the other directors I work with is because she's a woman. I hope people understand that it's hard to admit." Though she said that she regretted how internalized misogyny impacted her mindset, Hathaway stated at the time that the experience taught her more than any other film she'd done to that point. From Star Wars to Game of Thrones to the MCU, Emilia Clarke is a well-known face to nearly every corner of the geek galaxy. But while her luck in this realm is a mixed bag at best, one coveted property in particular left a horrible taste in her mouth.
Come with me if you want to live.
In a 2019 cover story for Vanity Fair, Clarke was surprisingly blunt when discussing 2015's Terminator Genesis, a project which was, by her account, a disaster to be a part of. Clarke simply said, "No one had a good time." She also shared that the crew of that same year's equally infamous Fantastic Four movie had jackets made that read, "At least we're not on Terminator." Clarke was joined on Genesis by Matt Smith and frequent Thrones director Alan Taylor, the latter of whom she described as being eaten up and chewed out during production. She even said that she was relieved when the film bombed at the box office, as it killed any chance of a direct sequel getting made. Though another Terminator film was released in 2019, it was done without any involvement from Clarke. They may have helped turn her into a household name, but Megan Fox has one regret about her time on the Transformers movies. While shooting the first 2 films of the franchise, the actor got a first-hand look at Michael Bay's bombastic directing style, which sparked a level of chaos she wasn't used to. Bay is infamous for this. A behind-the-scenes video taken on the set of Ambulance went viral for showing several crew members seemingly running for cover from a fiery car chase gone wrong, while an extra on Transformers Dark of the Moon successfully sued the studio for over $18 million in damages after a stunt left her with permanent brain damage. It sounds like working with Michael Bay can be stressful, to say the least. And during a 2009 interview with Wonderland, Fox explained her stress using a fairly distasteful analogy. She said, "He's like Napoleon and he wants to create this insane, infamous madman reputation. He wants to be like Hitler on his sets, and he is." Fox's casual evocation of Adolf Hitler drew understandable ire from the entertainment community, including Steven Spielberg, who reportedly ordered Bay to fire her from the 3rd Transformers movie as a result. She's since expressed remorse for how she acted, telling Cosmopolitan in 2017, "All I had to do was apologize, and I refused. Once I realized I brought it on myself, it was an invaluable learning experience." While the Paramount Plus reboot to the immensely popular teen sitcom iCarly featured much of the original cast when it debuted in 2021, one notable absence was Jennette McCurdy as Carly's best friend Sam Puckett. This is because McCurdy had quit acting altogether by the time the series was given the green light. McCurdy felt embarrassed and ashamed of the role she played throughout her career. She also didn't miss the pressure of being the breadwinner for her family, which, by her own reckoning, became her role when she was 10 or 11. She also struggled with the imperative to put her own emotions on the back burner for the sake of her roles, as well as the cruel reality of Hollywood's beauty standards, which eventually led her to develop an eating disorder. All this she endured for a career that she did not find fulfilling, making it easy to see how the star would harbor resentment. McCurdy has since recounted many more harrowing memories from her tragic life story in her 2022 memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, and while she's hinted at potentially acting again, she remains more interested in writing and directing.